Hello, this video today is a Logger Pro video tutorial just to show you a little bit about the basics of using Logger Pro. In this first part of the video, I am going to show how to input data manually into Logger Pro, supposing you just have some data that you took in a lab or wherever and you want to just input it yourself. So here we open up a copy of Logger Pro, and this copy of Logger Pro I already have the data showing over here, and you can see I just inputted some data. I won't have you watch me do that because I'm sure you can do it yourself. But you could just use your arrow and tab keys to tab through and enter the data that you've got. So I just entered 7 sets of data here, 7 pairs of numbers, and we're ready to go. And you can see that as you enter the data, it is automatically being graphed over here to the right. And so you can just get a quick glance of what the data look like. So now most of the features within Logger Pro, to change anything, you'll get a dialog box where you can change all kinds of different features in terms of how it looks and how the data is displayed. So the first thing I'd like to focus on is how to change anything having to do with the data. So the first thing we'd like to do is change these column headings. So instead of having the independent variable called x and the dependent y, we want to put what those actual variables are. So if I just double click on the X column here, I get a dialog box called Manual Column Options. And here we've got column definition. So here what I'm going to do is instead of putting in X, I'm going to type in that this is actually a volume measurement. And the short name is what you would use if you make your data table small so that you can't show the whole name volume. The short name it would show is just V. And the units I'm going to use for this volume we're measured in are in meters cubed. So I'll type the meters, and then if I choose this little pull down menu over here, I can choose superscript and then 3 to get a nice little meters cubed there. So that's where I change things under this column definition tab, and I'm going to click on this other tab, options. This is where you can change the color and the type of symbol that you use for your data. However, you don't want to change, or it doesn't do anything to change this for the independent variable because that's not where we're actually graphing. So for here, this is going to be done for now. And you can see that it gave me a new column heading over here, volume, and whatever column heading you have on your data table, it shows up down here on the graph as well. So I'm going to do the same thing for the y variable, the dependent variable. Let's first go to column definition, and this is mass. Oops, let me start this. Mass, and the short name for that will be M, and my units here will be kilograms. And you can either tab through these boxes or just click on them. And here I'll go to options, and the dependent variable here, the y variable, that's the one we are actually graphing. So here I can choose lots of different point symbols. Here I'm going to choose something that's filled so it shows up a little better. And here you can change your color to be just about anything you want. The only thing to keep in mind here is if you are printing on a black and white printer, then you want to stay away from any of the really light colored colors because those don't show up as well. But for now, I think we'll leave it as red. A couple other things to note in this dialog box. This box over here displayed precision and give you a place to show different numbers of decimal points if that's something that's needed for your data. Clicking done here, then we see that we have our data table now shows our column headings in a nice way, and we've got both our labels on the actual graph. Okay, so now we have our data all set, and the graph actually looks quite nice, but I just want to show you some other things that you can change. Lots of different things you can change on this graph. So if you want to change anything on the graph itself, you want to double click on the graph, and you will get the graph options dialog box. You can obviously access this as well from the menu up here. I believe it's under options. So this first box here is where you'd want to put in a title for the graph. So this is maybe volume versus mass, y versus x, yes, volume versus mass data, whatever data you want, whatever title you would like to put. So let me just run through a few of these things that are important. So under the little examine box here, you've got mouse position and delta. This is checked on right here. And if you look in this lower point right here, you can see there's it gives you the coordinates of the point anywhere your mouse is. So if you have this closed and I move my mouse around, you can see that the coordinates, it tells me the coordinates any place my mouse is. That could be a useful thing. You can have it on or you can have it off. Appearance over here is another important place. Point symbols is checked on. The point symbols are these symbols right here that go over the data points. Sometimes you might want them on, sometimes you might want them off. Here's what they look like if they're off. You can see just a tiny little dot here just to indicate where it is, but sometimes you don't want those point symbols showing. And the other thing that is used often is either turning the connect points on or off. So if I turn on the connect points, it actually just connects the points with a line. I usually have that off because often we will fit a curve to our data. The rest of these options are things that we don't use very often. Obviously you could use arrow bars if you want. I usually just leave it checked on. And here you can change the tick style and the grid lines in the back. The second tab up here, Axes Options. This is a very important dialog box because this is where you tell the Logger Pro what exactly it is you want to graph. So you can change the y-axis label here if you want, but as long as your labels are correct on your data table over here, then there's no reason to change the label here. This box right here, the y-axis columns, this is where you tell the computer what it's actually going to be graphing. So the only thing that's checked here is mass, because that's the actual data value that we want to graph, because we're graphing how the mass changes with different volumes. So that's the one that we want to have checked on. Here we have a place where you can scale. So you can choose a manual scale or auto scale, depending on how you want it. The manual scale is nice to do. Sometimes you might want to make your own scale. That's all for the y-axis. And down here is where you change anything for the x-axis. So the scaling over here is what is useful sometimes. This is going from 0 to 10. You can change that to be whatever you want. If you get into more complicated sets of data, you can have another set of data that's showing up on the right y-axis if you want. So I'm going to click Done here, and we'll see how our graph looks. One other thing I'll look at right now is how you could do a linear fit to this data. Two ways to do that. One is to either use one of these hot buttons up here, and it's actually this one right here that's called linear fit, or you can choose from the Analyze menu. Scrolling down here, there's linear fit. And if you click on linear fit, it automatically does a best fit line for your data. These little brackets here are what tell you what data to be selected. So if, for instance, I only wanted to select this amount of data from this bracket to this bracket, then that's a way to change that. And you can see as I move this around, it makes if my data were not so linear, it would change and adjust the line accordingly. So in this box here, it gives you the information for your linear fit, the slope, the intercept, and then the correlation factor and the RMSE, or the root mean square error, which just give you a sense of how good that data actually is.